The Israel pilot trip, a descent into beautiful, hummus-scented madness. Let me tell you about the moment I realized this pilot trip was going to break me. I was standing in what the listing described as a spacious one-bedroom in the heart of Tel Aviv, which was actually a shoebox where the bedroom, kitchen, and bathroom were all within touching distance of each other. The landlord was showing me how the shower cleverly drained directly onto the bathroom floor, which then conveniently flooded into the main living space, creating what he called a natural cooling system in summer. "Very efficient," he said, beaming with pride. I nodded and smiled, because I'd been in Israel for exactly 36 hours and hadn't yet learned that you're allowed to tell people they're insane. This was apartment number 7 on day 2 of my 14-day pilot trip, during which I would view approximately 37 apartments, walk roughly 84 miles through Tel Aviv streets, consume my body weight in hummus, and slowly come to terms with the fact that Israeli landlords can describe a flooding bathroom as a feature and expect you to pay $2,000 a month for the privilege. Welcome to the Israel pilot trip, where your dreams of making Aliyah come face to face with Israeli real estate, and reality usually wins. I'd arrived at Ben Gurion Airport at 6 in the morning after a 12-hour flight, convinced I was prepared. I had a plan. I had a color-coded spreadsheet. I had a folder with 47 different documents that the internet said I might need. I had booked accommodations in 3 different neighborhoods so I could experience the daily rhythms of each area. I was organized, rational, and ready to make an informed decision about my future. I laugh at that version of myself now. That naive, optimistic person who thought 2 weeks was plenty of time to find an apartment and figure out if she could live in a country where toilet-shower combos are considered normal. 2 weeks is simultaneously too long and not nearly long enough. The first apartment viewing should have been a warning. The landlord, a woman named Orly, arrived 20 minutes late, which I would soon learn is early by Israeli standards. We climbed 4 flights of stairs. "No elevator, but it's good exercise," she chirped, to reach a studio apartment where the bedroom was separated from the living area by a curtain. The bathroom featured a shower head aimed directly at the toilet. There was no separation. You showered while sitting on the toilet, or you accepted that your toilet would be perpetually wet. These were your options. "Very spacious," Orly said, gesturing at a room the size of a parking space. "The location is incredible." "It's lovely," I heard myself say, because apparently my brain had decided that honesty was no longer a priority. I took photos, added notes to my spreadsheet under a column I'd labeled "God No," and moved on to apartment number 2. By day 5, I'd mastered the unwritten rules of Israeli apartment hunting. Rule 1. When a landlord says they have 3 other people interested, they're lying, but you should act concerned anyway. Rule 2. Cozy means small. Charming means old. Cozy and charming means you'll be living in a closet from 1952. Rule 3. No one arrives on time. Ever. Israeli time is regular time plus an invisible buffer of 30 to 60 minutes. If someone says they'll meet you at 10, they mean they'll probably leave their house around 10 and arrive sometime between 10:30 and the heat death of the universe. Rule 4. Everything is negotiable, especially your dignity. The breaking point came with apartment number 16. The landlord showed me into what was technically an apartment in that it had walls and a door. The bedroom was a loft accessed by a ladder. Not stairs. A ladder. Like I was going to sleep in a treehouse, except the treehouse was indoors and cost $1,400 a month and required me to scale furniture every time I needed to use the bathroom at night. "Very unique," the landlord said. "Great for a single person." This is when I snapped. "No," I said. Not "I'll think about it." Not "let me get back to you." Just no. I walked directly to the nearest cafe, ordered a beer at 2 in the afternoon, and sat there staring at my spreadsheet, wondering what I was doing with my life. 15 apartments. 15. And not a single one that felt right. But then day 9 happened, and I learned the importance of the second viewing. I'd liked apartment number 8 during my first visit at 11 on a Wednesday morning. Quiet, bright, perfect. The second viewing was at 7 on a Friday evening. The apartment was directly above a bar hosting live music. The walls were vibrating. I could feel the bass in my teeth. "You didn't mention the bar," I said to the landlord. "Oh, the bar," he said as if he just remembered it existed. "Yeah, Friday nights are a bit loud, but only until 2. Only until 2 in the morning. Every Friday. Forever." I added a new column to my spreadsheet. Noise check. Evening. The trip's turning point came on day 11, when I met with an Israeli accountant named Daphne. I'd been dreading this meeting, the one where I'd learn whether I could actually afford to live in Israel or whether this entire trip had been an expensive fantasy. I explained my situation. Remote work for an American company, making about $100,000 a year. Daphne's eyes lit up. "Do you know about new resident status?" she asked. I didn't. So she explained that as a new immigrant, I'd qualify for a 10-year tax exemption on foreign source income. Instead of paying $30,000 a year in Israeli taxes, I'd pay maybe $5,000 in U.S. taxes. That's a $25,000 annual savings for 10 years, plus healthcare included, saving another $10,000 per year, plus subsidized childcare if I had kids. So financially, I said slowly, processing numbers my jet-lagged brain could barely comprehend, this makes sense. If you structure it properly, yes. You'd be better off financially in Israel than staying in the U.S. I left that meeting with my entire economic understanding of Israel completely transformed. All those expensive apartments suddenly seemed affordable when I was keeping an extra $25,000 per year. That $2,000 a month rent in Neve Tzedek, it was effectively $1,200 when you factored in tax savings. Maybe I could afford this after all. Maybe the flooded bathrooms and toilet shower combos and chronically late landlords were a reasonable price to pay for $250,000 tax savings and universal health care. By day 13, I'd seen 31 apartments and had developed what I can only describe as housing-induced Stockholm syndrome. That studio with questionable plumbing started looking pretty good. That place where the kitchen was technically a corner with a hot plate, character building. The apartment where you could touch all 4 walls while standing in the center, cozy minimalism. On day 14, my last day, I sat in a cafe in Florentine, the loud, gritty, artistic neighborhood I'd somehow fallen in love with despite the noise and the chaos and the graffiti, and I realized something. This whole pilot trip hadn't been about finding the perfect apartment. It had been about figuring out if I could handle the imperfection, the late landlords, the flexible relationship with punctuality, the creative plumbing solutions, the aggressive negotiation culture, the fact that everyone has opinions about everything and they're going to share them whether you asked or not. Could I live with that? Could I thrive in it? I opened my spreadsheet one more time, looked at the 37 apartments I'd viewed, the 3 neighborhoods I'd lived in, the countless cafes where I'd sat processing information and drinking $5 coffee, and I realized I'd already made my decision. Not about which apartment to rent, I still had no idea about that, but about whether I could make this work. I could. It would be chaotic and frustrating and expensive and occasionally involve showering while sitting on a toilet. But I could. I booked my follow-up trip for 2 months later. Sent WhatsApp messages to my top 5 landlords asking if their apartments were still available, and went to get one last falafel before my flight home. The falafel guy charged me 50 shekels, which seemed expensive until he filled the pita so full that it essentially became 3 meals. Israeli portions are generous, even if Israeli bathrooms are not. As I sat in Ben Gurion Airport waiting for my flight, eating my overstuffed falafel and watching other travelers begin their own Israeli adventures, I thought about everything I'd learned. The practical stuff, how to navigate Move It, where to find the cheap supermarkets, which neighborhoods were too loud for human habitation. But also the emotional stuff. That apartment hunting is supposed to be hard. That culture shock is real. That sometimes the things that frustrate you most are the same things you'll end up loving. And that if a landlord ever again tries to tell me that a flooding bathroom is a feature, I'm allowed to say no. I boarded my flight home with a sunburn, a depleted bank account, a phone full of apartment photos, and the strange certainty that I'd be back. Not because Israel was perfect, it absolutely wasn't, but because it was perfectly imperfect in a way that felt like it might be home. Also because I'd already paid the deposit on apartment number 23, the one in Florentin with the acceptable plumbing and the balcony and the landlord who was only 15 minutes late to our viewing. Progress. The pilot trip hadn't given me all the answers. but it had given me enough of them. The rest I'd figure out when I moved, one flooded bathroom at a time.